Today is a little bit unusual for me. It's the first time I've been asked to give a chapel hour speech this close to Christmas. Usually I end up speaking in September or October. So given that Christmas is just a few days away, I thought I would talk today about some memories of my American Christmas. I thought it would be interesting for students to hear about how my family spent Christmas in rural America. As I think many of you know by now, I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and grew up in a nearby rural area that was famous for coal mining. During the time I was growing up there, many years ago, it was a very difficult time. The steel industry in America had collapsed, and the major industries in the region were suffering. People were struggling everywhere, kind of like now. I was a bit lucky though. My father was a high school teacher, and so we were safe from the job losses that many of our neighbors experienced. The neighborhood, however, was pretty strong. There were social networks that held the people closely together. Central amongst these networks was the church. This was a time when many Americans, even young Americans, still felt close ties to the church. Part of the reason why was that this was an immigrant community. Many of the people in the area were second or third generation immigrants from Eastern Europe or Italy. Their parents had moved to the region to work in the coal mines or the steel factories, and now many of them were working the same kinds of jobs in the mining and steel industries. In their daily lives, they still carried out many of the traditions that they had learned from their parents or grandparents. Tradition filled their lives and helped them to make sense of the world. The church played a central role in people's lives at that time. For example, my father and uncles all played on a church-sponsored softball team during the summers when I was young. Most of the working-age men in the region played as well. The softball field was at the center of our small town, so everyone could walk there easily. The warm summer nights often brought the whole town out for the softball games. For a while I was growing up, the church in my neighborhood and the other social networks were able to continue to hold the town together despite the economic problems. It was the end of an era, although I didn't realize it at the time. This time was also unique in that it was a several-year-long downturn in temperatures in my region. It was quite common during these years that our school would be closed due to too much snow. The large yellow school buses were unable to drive in so much snow, so the students could stay home for the day. As you might expect, I really enjoyed those snow days. This was before the internet was created, however, so to find out if the school was canceled for that day, I would have to jump out of bed in the morning and run to the radio to listen to the announcements. I can tell you that was the first thing I did every morning. Because those years were so cold and there was so much snow, it was a time to spend with my neighborhood friends, a chance that we wouldn't get normally. And what it also meant was that during Christmas, it was quite often a white Christmas, the legendary white Christmas. I wonder if you've ever lived in a place that gets a lot of snow. I mean like a major snowstorm, yeah, like 30 centimeters or so. If you haven't, I should tell you that getting a snowstorm like that, especially when it's a fresh snowstorm, it really creates a kind of special environment. First, it dampens the sound, creates this kind of silent night feeling. It's like you've been transported to a completely new world. Second, the snow hides all of the problems that are in the area. All of the garbage and the trash and the ugliness is gone from view. It just disappears. The only thing left is a beautiful carpet of pure white snow. For me, this period was also a special time because my grandparents were still alive then. We would always gather at their home for the Christmas holidays. I have two cousins who are close to my age, so including my younger brother, we were the only children there. But I enjoyed this time a lot because I seldom had a chance to spend time with my cousins, even though they lived fairly close by. Like most American children, we were spending so much time with studies, sports, and all those other things that young people do that we had virtually no time to spend together. So basically, Christmas Eve was the only time of the year that my entire family could be together. So our Christmas celebrations began on Christmas Eve with everyone gathering at my grandparents' house to help with the final part of the decorations. My favorite decorations during those years was kind of unusual. I think it was part of the local traditions in the region. We would put sand in a small paper bag. Then inside the paper bag would be a small candle. Then we would place these in the snow around the house and around the yard where we lived. Of course, we had colored electric lights as well, in addition to these paper bags all around the house and the yard. But as children, we really enjoyed the paper bag lights because it had a little bit of that forbidden activity of fire, playing with fire, even if it was small candles. At this time, it was relatively safe because of all of the snow. These days, of course, there's no snow where my parents used to live. That's all gone because of global warming. So these days, it would be much too dangerous to have these kinds of decorations. It's a bit unfortunate. It feels like we've lost a little bit of the magic of Christmas, at least to me. Another tradition that I enjoyed was the evening meal with my family on Christmas Eve. It was the strongest expression of our ethnic and cultural heritage. Before anyone could eat, we had a special ceremony that we would perform. We would pass around and eat a Christmas wafer. It was about the size of a sheet of paper, large wafer. We would break this into smaller pieces, pass the pieces around to all of the members of my family, and then we would exchange a piece of those smaller pieces with everyone else. And when we did this, we would express our wishes, greetings to them for the coming year. It was something that we bought from the wafers were bought from the church, and they often had the image of the Virgin Mary and Christ child on them. So it was yet another thing that tied us to the church during this season. After all the exchanges of greetings, we would then eat those pieces of wafer with some honey. And then there was the special ethnic food that we would eat. As I said, our family was from Eastern Europe, so our food, of course, reflected that ancestry. We always had three things: pierogi, the small dumplings, a Christmas ham, definitely not chicken, and something called a nut roll, which was a kind of sweet bread that was made with sweet yeast dough, raisins, and crushed walnuts. Of course, as part of the tradition, everyone ate too much, and we usually couldn't move for several hours after the meal. The last part of our evening was the midnight mass at the church. As Americans, we had to drive our cars to the church at midnight, and because of the snow, the lights would reflect all around us, and it made the drive seem like a mystical part of that evening. Unfortunately, we've now lost many of our cultural traditions. My brother and I haven't been interested in doing these things or passing them on to our children. So these days, I just settle for telling my children the stories of my Christmas holidays as a child and as stories of a world gone by.